Sometimes the most epic stories aren't these grand tales of kings and queens. Nope, they're the quiet, persistent sagas of a single family, stories you have to piece together from old documents and faded ink. Today, we are diving deep into one of those journeys, the saga of the Wintringham family. We're going to trace their story across 4 centuries of faith, rebellion, tragedy, and ultimately, transformation.
Okay, so where does it all begin? Right here. Not with some big, grand declaration, but with a single, handwritten line in a dusty parish register from Yorkshire, England. Look at that date, June 15th, 1617. This, right here, is the very first trace we have of the Wintringham name. It's a simple marriage record, but it's the start of a journey that's going to span continents and centuries. So, to really get this story, we're going to follow them through 5 key chapters. We'll kick things off with their Quaker beginnings back in England. Then we'll join them on a pretty dangerous ocean crossing. After that, we'll witness a really heartbreaking family conflict, follow them right into the heart of industrial America, and finally, we'll see the incredible legacy they managed to build. All right, let's jump forward in time to the 1700s. By this point, the family's identity is really deeply woven into 2 things: their devout Quaker faith and their craft as weavers in these small coastal villages in Yorkshire. Now, check out this record from 1751. This is for John Wintringham, and he's a really key figure who's eventually going to lead his family to America. But this document, it's so much more than a birth certificate. It's a fascinating little clue into their entire world. Just notice the specific wording of the date, the 20th day of the 9th month. Kind of weird, right?
Well, here's the reason for that unusual date, and it's absolutely fascinating. Quakers refused to use common names for months or days, like Thursday for the god Thor or March for Mars, because they were all named after pagan gods. So for them, the 9th month was just November. It's a small detail, but it shows you just how completely their faith shaped every single part of their daily lives.
And you better believe that faith governed life's biggest moments too. When John married Hannah Coverdale in 1773, the certificate goes out of its way to say it had the full consent of their parents and the entire Quaker meeting. This was a community-approved union, and it enforced a really strict standard of conformity. And believe me, that standard is going to spark a massive family conflict just 1 generation later. But before that conflict could even happen, the family story takes this huge, dramatic turn. John and Hannah decide to leave the only home they have ever known, risking absolutely everything for the promise of a new life over in America. This timeline really lays out that life-changing decision. They leave from the port of Hull in 1794, and then endure 11 grueling weeks at sea before they finally arrive in New York. Can you just imagine that? Almost 3 months on a wooden ship with 6 kids crossing the vast, unpredictable Atlantic. And it turns out the journey wasn't just about surviving storms. This quote, which comes from a family history, reveals a pretty shocking reality. They deliberately took a more dangerous northerly route for one very specific reason: to avoid pirates. I mean, this wasn't some movie plot. This was a real, terrifying danger they had to navigate. The records also paint this incredible picture of the matriarch, Hannah. I mean, she wasn't just a mother. Family lore remembers her as a doctress. This is one story, passed down through generations, that claims while she was working in a hayfield, she single-handedly reset a man's dislocated neck. That tells you everything you need to know about this woman. Incredible skill, incredible resilience. Exactly what she'd need to survive in a new world. So once they settled in Dutchess County, New York, the family's super strict faith pretty quickly collided with the freedoms of their new home. And this clash really came to a head with their son, Isaac, and a choice he made that would tear the family away from their community. And you can really see that generational divide right here. On one side, you've got his parents, John and Hannah, whose marriage had to be approved by their entire religious community. But then, in 1800, their son Isaac decides to marry a local woman, Susanna Half, who was not a Quaker. And for this one act, he was formally disowned, which basically means he was excommunicated, kicked out of his community and his faith. In this single act of love, this act of rebellion, it set the entire family on a completely new course. Now cut off from their Quaker community, Isaac and Susanna packed everything up and headed west, leaving New York for the Ohio frontier. This one decision pushed them and all of their descendants deeper and deeper into the American heartland. So the family successfully puts down new roots in Ohio, but their story, which is now a fully American one, takes a really sudden and heartbreaking turn with another Isaac Wintringham. Not the one who was disowned, but his grandson, who was born in 1832.
This Isaac really represents the family's complete assimilation into America. He's a respected local artisan, a shoemaker with his own shop and his own home in Marion, Ohio. He's just a man living a quiet, stable life, a world away from the strict religious rules and dangerous sea voyages of his ancestors.
And then this stark, brutal newspaper headline from 1904 just shatters that peaceful existence. The clatter of the new industrial age, the very thing bringing progress to America, collides violently and tragically with the Wintringham family story.
The details in the newspaper report are they're heartbreaking. Isaac was 72, and according to other records, he was hard of hearing. He was hit by the train while he was just doing his job, delivering a pair of shoes he had just finished repairing. And what makes it even more tragic is that this happened just 2 days after he and his wife celebrated their 43rd wedding anniversary.
But, the family's story doesn't end in tragedy. It keeps going. And in doing so, it perfectly mirrors the massive economic and social changes that were sweeping through America in the early 20th century. I mean, what a difference a generation makes, right? You see the shift right here between the father, Isaac, and his son, Homer. In just one generation, the family livelihood moves from a self-employed artisan, a master of his craft, to a painter on an automobile assembly line, a wage earner in a factory. It is a powerful snapshot of the Industrial Revolution's impact on one American family. And it's this next generation, Isaac's son Homer and his new wife Alice, who really just fully embrace this new industrial age. They move from Marion to the booming factory town of Toledo, where they raise a big family of their own, really cementing the Wintringham's place in modern industrial America. And this number really shows their ultimate legacy. When Alice, Homer's wife, passed away in 1962, her obituary listed 41 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. 41! Just think about that. From that one little family of 8 who crossed the Atlantic 170 years earlier, this one branch of the family tree had just exploded. So in the end, the Wintringham Saga is so much more than just one family's history. It's a powerful reminder that the most extraordinary tales of resilience, of rebellion, of adaptation, they aren't always in the history books. They're personal, and they're often hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be discovered in the records of our own families.